than $4 million in compensatory damages. Now, that's far from the $150 million that they were seeking. A separate trial for punitive damages is now expected to follow, and there could be higher damages awarded there. As you'll recall, Alex Jones basically said in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook shooting that the incident was staged. He faced multiple lawsuits after that and later acknowledged that the shooting did happen. And in court this week, he testified that he now believed it to be 100% real. During the court this week, he failed to comply with the judge's orders. The judge was clearly frustrated with him for some of his answers and implied without the jury present that he had lied several times to the jury. This comes after this judge ruled last October that Jones was legally responsible for inflicting emotional distress on Heslin and Lewis, and they, of course, are the parents of Jesse Lewis, who was one of the children killed at Sandy Hook. So again, it's a $4 million award, far from the $150 million that was asked for by Heslin and Lewis after what you might describe as a very contentious trial. This is Janet Shamlian in Texas.
Janet, stay with us if you don't mind. Janet Shamlian is with us. She's on the ground in Texas following the verdict in the Alex Jones case, the civil suit in Austin, Texas this afternoon. Janet, looking ahead, what are some other challenges facing Alex Jones?
That's a good question because last week, Jones put his parent company that runs InfoWars, his media show, into bankruptcy. And of course, there's the belief that he did so to avoid, paying a large monetary award. And in fact, during the testimony, he said to the jury that he was bankrupt, which the judge admonished him for, saying, that's not really true. You put your company into bankruptcy. But there will be the discussion of whether whether his company can pay these damages. And when asked during the trial what he would award or what he could pay, Alex Jones answered to the jury, he said an award of $2 million or whatever you feel is appropriate. As I mentioned, this is just for, this is not the punitive part of the trial. I mean, there will be another trial coming. It's expected to be much shorter, and at that point, a jury will deliberate punitive damages.
Janet Shamlian's on the ground for CBS News in Texas. Janet, appreciate you being here. Stay with us because this case has another element to it. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol attack is now asking for Alex Jones's phone records. Take us inside this development in the civil suit and the trial.
So here's what happened. During the trial, prosecutors asked Alex Jones, did you ever text about Sandy Hook? And he replied no. And then later in the trial, those prosecutors came back and told Jones in front of the jury, look, I know you lied, and here's how I know. It was sort of a very startling moment. He said, your defense team in error actually sent me something like 2 years of your text messages by mistake. They were not supposed to, but I have 2 years of your text messages, Alex Jones. So I know you testified about, I know you texted about Sandy Hook, and therefore I know that you lied. And when this information became public in court within the last couple of days, then we heard that the January 6th committee would potentially like to subpoena those text messages.
Janet Shamlian for CBS News. Janet, can you just remind us, for those who are just tuning in to CBS News streaming, about the verdict in the Alex Jones case today in Austin, Texas?
Yes. So the right-wing talk show host Alex Jones is going to have to pay the parents of a Sandy Hook shooting victim about $4 million in damages. That is according to a jury decision this afternoon. It comes at the end of a dramatic case that showcased the harm that comes by viral conspiracy theories. It's not what the plaintiffs, Scarlett Lewis and Neil Heslin, asked for. They were asking for $150 million in compensatory damages. And again, a punitive damages trial will follow. But this process started several years ago. I believe it was in 2018. Heslin and Lewis, who are the parents of Sandy Hook victim Jesse Lewis, they sued Jones's company, which is called Free Speech Systems, that is the parent of the right-wing media organization InfoWars. And Jones has said in the aftermath of the shooting, 20 children, I believe, and 6 teachers were killed. The incident was staged. They are not the only county suing. There are other lawsuits pending. But this was the first award, and many looked at this as bigger than what happened in the aftermath of Sandy Hook, that it was more, it spoke more broadly to conspiracy theories and the harm they have on those impacted and the public.
Janet, how disappointing is it for these families? They sought $150 million from Alex Jones, $4 million in the verdict today. Is the $4 million seen as at least something by your sources familiar with this trial, or is it seen as a disappointment?
I don't know really how they come up with the number. It seemed large at the outset by a lot of people, and I'm just not sure how to read into it. Again, these were the damages that, that they actually incurred. So it seems like $150 million is a big number, and perhaps a bigger number will come for punitive damages. They were asked about things like how much did have your counselors cost, your therapist over the years. So not really sure what the family will make of this. We have not heard from them yet at this time.
And Alex Jones, Janet, was deplatformed by a number of media companies for calling the Sandy Hook massacre a false flag operation. But he's continued to operate his show, hasn't he? And
he's making a lot of money doing it. And in fact, he did not show up for the testimony of Neil Heslin, the father of Jesse. I believe it was Tuesday morning, because he was doing his radio show. And when he showed up in the afternoon for the testimony of Jesse's mother, prosecutors presented his show from that day, which even as the trial against him was going on, he was making insulting statements about the father, Neil Heslin, calling him slow.
Janet Shamlian, really appreciate your time and for your reporting on this important story and this development. We'll leave you there for now. Let's bring in Jessica Levinson. She is on the phone, I believe, with us, joining CBS News Streaming. Jessica?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. You are a CBS News legal contributor. What's your reaction to the $4 million being awarded to the families after they sought $150 million from Alex Jones?
Well, two things, basically. This has to be a disappointment for the families. Obviously, they were asking for a huge amount more. And I think it can't be a huge surprise, though, given some of the questions that we heard from the jury, given that this is really about actual damages. And as you were just discussing, and as I think it's important to remember, the punitive damages part of the trial will resume and is separate. So this is about a different level of damages. This is basically how much did it cost these parents as a result of the torts. And this trial was all about damages. There was already a default judgment that was imposed against Alex Jones. This was not about liability. The next phase is really the phase to watch when it comes to punitive damages. Typically speaking, punitive damages have to be only a kind of reasonable multiple of the actual damages, seen as basically a cap of 10 times as much of the actual damages. So I think at the most, my guess is we're looking at $40 million in punitive. Again, I think that's the most we would be looking at.
What's your expectation as a legal analyst?
So if you look at Alex Jones and if you look at the trial and the fact that we had this really shocking Perry Mason moment where he admitted on the stand that he had lied under oath, that in fact he did not provide text messages where he had texted about Sandy Hook and said earlier in this trial that he had no such text messages. Things like that cannot endear him to the jury. Having said that, if we look at the actual damages here, this doesn't, to me, look like a jury that is enraged by his behavior. And it's certainly, because it's such a far cry from what they were asking, I do think we need to be tempered. I would be surprised if we see the maximum amount of punitives, which is $40 million. Again, even though he is frankly such an unlikable figure, let's remember what this is all about. This is about him lying, claiming that the mass murder of children was a hoax and that the grieving parents were paid actors.
Jessica Levinson, a CBS News legal analyst, is with us. Jessica, stay with us. CBS News, Jessica, is being told that this is actually potentially a, quote, partial verdict award. What is your response to that piece of reporting?
So if this is a partial verdict award and not just for all of the actual damages, then frankly, that might be less of a surprise. So I looked down the counts, and it looked like, to me, based on a very quick scan, that this was a full award. But if there's some counts where they either misreported or they hadn't reported the full amount yet, then that obviously changes, again, the actual damages, how much the parents here were harmed, how much out of pocket they had to pay as a result of the defamation and the intentional infliction of emotional distress. But as we've been talking about, similarly, it would change the punitive damages because we're looking at a maximum amount of about 10 times the actual.
And when you step back, Jessica, and you look at the challenge of suing a media personality like Alex Jones, what were the challenges early on in this trial when they tried to take him on, the families from Sandy Hook?
That's such a good question. And I think part of the strangeness of this trial, for lack of a better word, is that this was not about liability. So there have been 4 defamation cases, as I know, against Alex Jones that have all ended in default judgments. What do we mean by that? What we mean is that he was sued for defamation, again, based on these false claims that Sandy Hook was a hoax, that the parents were paid actors. And in all 4 of those cases, he did not respond to court orders to provide testimony or to provide documents. So what the court did is they entered, as we said, a default judgment against him. So there weren't full trials where we had to hear his defense that, in fact, what we understand his defense would have been, that he was protected by the First Amendment in his claims. Now, that obviously changes the trial. So this was all about how much were the parents harmed, not whether or not the torts were committed. And I think that really changes the calculus for how this case proceeded. They didn't have to prove liability. It went straight to the damages phase.
Jessica Levinson, CBS News legal analyst, joins us now. Jessica, stay with us for a moment. You just mentioned that dramatic moment in court when the prosecutor told Alex Jones he had seen 2 years of his phone records and emails. What kind of predicament was that for Jones and his attorney?
So it's a predicament, I think, on a number of different levels. One, in the actual courtroom, he's caught in a lie. And I know that a lot of people are used to seeing trials play out maybe in a fictionalized version on television, but that simply does not happen very often in real life. That really was a Perry Mason, as we said, type moment. The other thing is we already know that Alex Jones, I believe, has been asked, his attorney has been asked by the January 6th committee, and I think either has already been asked or will be asked by the Department of Justice to turn over some of these text messages based on his involvement with January 6th. So this has repercussions and a ripple effect outside of this particular trial. We also need to remember that separately, when Alex Jones said, I didn't text about Sandy Hook, he was under oath. And now we have texts that show he did text about Sandy Hook. So there's a perjury issue here as well. And that's why the plaintiff's attorney said to him, as this really startling questioning was occurring yesterday. Do you know what perjury is? And so I think that, again, this is a multi-pronged kind of hurt for Alex Jones. It's not just this case. It stretches beyond this case.
We'll leave it there. Jessica Levinson from Loyola University and a CBS News legal analyst, thank you so much for being here. I'll be back in just a few minutes here on CBS News streaming for Red and Blue.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the
And
past?
to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital.
We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct. Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News.
What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell them I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness. Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
I have today an incredible revelation regarding the flower of life and what is secretly embedded and comprised within it. There are exactly 144 components inside the flower of life, and I'd like to show you step by step how I achieved this code 144. So we're looking here at the flower of life. It's the most popular symbol in the mass consciousness in the planet, and it's made up of many circles. So I'm going to isolate what I see as 3 hexagons within the bigger hexagon. So when we start off at the center here, you can see that there's essentially a seed of life. This is the 6 petals, and that's the beginning of the flower of life, the 6 petals. And you can see I've drawn the 6 petals here, and that actually forms what we call a hexagon, a 6-sided. So the flower of life, the mother of all form, is essentially a one frequency hexagon. Then there's going to be a 2nd frequency here and a 3rd frequency. So the overall pattern, I'm calling it a 3 frequency hexagon, but we're going to start off with the center. And what I'm doing is I'm systematically examining the number of petals. So this shape here, to get that petal, you can see that with my compass, I had to get the radius. So from the center to there, without changing the radius, I drew the whole thing. So that radius goes around the circle 6 times. And as it intersects itself, it makes what we call like a lip shape, but we're going to call it a petal. So there's 6 petals in the middle and 6 petals on the outside. So we can say that one frequency flower of life has 12 petals. And then what's interesting is, so we know that the overall shape has 90 petals, and we're going to analyze the stages. But most people have never looked at the gap between the form. So in between the petals is a curved triangle. I'll just call it a triangle. But there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we can say that there's 12 petals and there's 6 triangles in the first stage of the flower of life. And so we're going to hold that information. And now we want to move, and now I'm going to move to the next frequency hexagon. And see how there's 2 petals here? We've got 2 petals here. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's 12 petals, but we want to count everything that's inside the 2 frequency hexagon. To explain that, what I've done, to show you how we count the petals in pencil here, you can see that there's the 1 frequency, and these purple petals here show that we have to count all of these, all of those in there, and the 12 on the outside. So when you count all of these petals for the 2 frequency, we end up with 42 petals. And now I've got to add also the triangles, and it works out to be 24. So the sum of all the parts of the 24 petals and the 42 petals and the 24 triangles, it sums to 66. Now the reason why that's interesting is that 66 in the Muslim religion is the name for Allah. The numerology of God in the ancient Islamic times was the number 66, and it's a repetition of 6 because we're looking at 6 within the 6 within the 6. We're looking at embedded hexagons within hexagons, and we also know that the symbol for the Muslim in Mecca is the giant cube. So because what you're looking at in the flower of life is essentially cube, but the secret, I believe, to the universe is when we embed self-similar cubes within the cubes within the cubes, just a bit like the Russian dolls. So now we're starting to see that there's stepping stones, and from this 2 frequency we want to go to the final component here. So we have to keep drawing all these circles around, and now we end up with what's called a 3 frequency, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all the way around. So this is where we need to add the sum of all the petals in the whole diagram. And we call it 90. There's 90 lips or leaf-like or petals, and the gaps in between, I've written it over here, in the 3 frequency flower of life, it has 90 petals and 54 triangles. So this is the epiphany. What's the sum of all the components within the flower of life? It's 90 plus 54 gives us 144. And that's quite interesting because in the world of physics, based on the Earth grid, and Bruce Cathy gave us some amazing harmonics of the universe, and he's saying that the speed of light at its maximum, not in the air or in the ether, but the speed of light at its maximum is 144,000 minutes of arc per grid second. And in harmonics, we're allowed to drop the zero. So the speed of light, which Einstein called c, is 144,000 minutes of arc per grid second. But when you drop off the zeros, we're left with harmonic 144. So this is really interesting because the ancients measured measurements in what we call nautical miles. So 144,000 nm or nautical miles is the correct way to measure the sacred sites around the planet. So this flower of life, the mother of all form, the blueprint of creation, is a shadow of a 3-dimensional construct of the sacred sites around the earth. So I'm calling it flower of life equals speed of light. So FOL equals SOL is a kind of an acronym to say the flower of life has a connection to the speed of light. And so what's also interesting as well is that when we look at the whole flower of life, we want to look at what's called nodal points. So there's a node in the middle, let's count them here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wherever I touch these center points, they're called nodes or intersections of the circles. So if you counted all the intersecting points, we have 37 pulsing nodes, and that's got to do a lot with the speed of light and the sun energy, because 37 is a critical part of what we call the magic square of 6 by 6. The magic square attributed to the sun has all its columns, rows and diagonals adding up to the number 111, but all the pairs are grouped according to a formula where we add the first number plus the last number. So 1 plus 36 is 37. So there's 37 nodal points on the flower of life, and 37 is connected to what we call the magic square of the sun. So that's why I've put in the sun here to represent that there's a connection to the light frequency. So when we're talking about 144,000 nautical miles, it's not a linear measurement. It's actually got to do with what we call ripples in space-time. So we've got to think of that the 360 degrees of the circle is a flat linear division of the circle, but because of the curvature of the Earth, Bruce Cathy was saying that there's really 370 degrees in the circles. Here's that number 37 nodes. Bruce Cathy was saying that to understand the architecture of curvology and Earth grids, we have to look at 370 degrees. Drop the 0 and you've got harmonic 37 linking back to the square of the sun. So what Bruce Cathy did here is that he took the reciprocal of the speed of the harmonic for the speed of light. So when you take the number 1 and divide it by 144, the answer on your calculator is 0.00694444. So those 4s, the repeating 4s, can be rounded off to a 5. So you got 0.00695. So he called it 695. And that's got to do with the gravity constant, because the opposite of light, by doing the reciprocal, we're looking at the pairing, the conjugate of light is gravity. So here we've got the reciprocal of light has a relationship to the gravity harmonic 695. So Bruce Cathy wrote a whole book just on harmonic 695, but it's really got to do with the 144 components of the flower of life. So I'm really interested in this because this is talking about the Earth grid and sacred sites and why we need to meet and connect at these power points on the Earth, because we're a fractal of the Earth, we're a cell of the Earth. So when we know how to travel and pray and connect to these nodal points, we're a fractal connecting from the point to the whole, and that's called holographic, when each part is connected to the whole part. So I think it's quite amazing that the flower of life is made up of 144 components. I really like that. And when I'm looking at the 54 triangles, the triangles here, there's 54 of them, and as you know, 54 is half the harmonic for the golden ratio code of 108, because the secret pattern in the mathematics of flowers and the human body is called the Fibonacci sequence, and it has a repeating pattern based on the number 108. So the number of negative spaces in here is half the harmonic of the golden ratio. And another little thing, as you can see, there's layers within layers. This is a highly encoded, embedded geometry of creation. And the more I look at it, we can keep discovering more things. Like, we could look at the number of nodal points here. So we've got 1 plus the 6 makes 7. So that 7 is a prime number. So the 7 is a prime number. The next prime number is 19 and 37. So when we count all the nodal points in the 2 frequency, we have 19 nodes here, which is a very important number. And like then we add up all the nodes, we've got 37. But if you could grow this flower of life, I'll show you here. If we take the flower of life and we keep expanding all the circles forever and ever and ever, we could predict that as we do the rings of nodes, we're going to get certain prime numbers. I think they're called Cuban primes. So this is just the beginning of an expanding research. And what I really like too is how the flower of life has a connection to the Fibonacci sequence, because have a look, because we said that there's a relationship to the golden ratio. So have a look at this. If we know that it's essentially hexagonal, but half the hexagon gives us a midpoint, so we can divide this into 12 points. There's 12 rays emanating through these nodes. If I drew a line from the center to these nodes, we've got a circle of 12, which is like the zodiac. So I'm going to write the first 12 Fibonacci numbers. So I'm going to go 1 plus 1 makes 2, 1 and 2 make 3, 2 and 3 make 5, 3 and 5 is 8, 5 and 8 make 13, 8 and 13 make 21, 13 and 21 is 34, 21 and 34 is 55, 34 and 55 is 89. Now let's add the previous one. 55 to 89 makes 144. This is the 144 harmonic, which I'm calling the code 144. And what I like about this is that the flower of life is in the mass consciousness. Everyone in the world is aligned to it and loves it, and they even draw it. When you're on the phone doodling, a lot of people will draw this basic rosette six-petaled motif. It's in every culture in the world. Yet here it is in our face, and no one has ever, it's not visible in print, I might be wrong, but I've never seen it. No one has ever literally counted all the unique components of the flower of life, and it's just beautiful and natural that it fits into the 144. Yes, so I'm really excited about sharing this revelation, because what I'm basically, a lot of my work is about inspiring people. No one owns the sacred geometry. It's universal knowledge, but I kind of have like X-ray eyes, and I love looking at basic simple structures like this cubic nature, the embedded cubes of the flower of life, this shadow that generates nesting cubes from the micro to the macro. So this is a pathway to the infinite, because we can keep expanding the flower of life, and we could keep studying and investigating all the other new numbers that we haven't even looked at yet. So I'm opening this to investigation, that if you're in tune with this, you resonate to this, you can keep expanding this flower of life and look at the 4 frequency hexagon and the 5 frequency and the 6 frequency, and we would predict that all the numbers of nature will appear. So I'm really excited to be presenting this code 144 based on the flower of life, the mother of all form, the blueprint of all creation. Thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Jane. I've recently had an epiphany with one of my 10-year-old students. He told me that the brain is a torus, and you know how much I'm fascinated by the sacred geometry of the inside becomes the outside and the torus. And then when he told me that the brain is a torus, I did a sketch of visualizing the brain as 2 halves. This is all about whole brain learning. And this sketch of the brain is a torus made me contemplate the cosmic man, woman, hermaphrodite, the being that contains all knowledge. So the sketch now evolved into this complicated text and graphics. So all this knowledge that you see is really saying that we have all this cosmic knowledge in our cells, in our mind, and in our spiritual body. So this is what we call cellular memory. So I decided to put down what I believe is important as the codes of creation. So we understand that there's this thing with the brain. So this is a story that we start from the base of the spine, which contains the 8 original cells. So the cube is symbolic of 8 spheres, which actually form the cube of space. This is the container of creation. It's the mother of all form. And then the other extreme, as we've got the spine, is the brain is the torus. We know that. Now, if you went from the base to the top, and you go to the midpoint, there's the midpoint. But we know that the midpoint of unity is 0.5, but the golden ratio is a fraction more than half. It's 0.618. So I've drawn the heart here. So, but the epiphany is that these 2 spirals of the heart represent a separation. We need to unite the 2 golden spirals into the one where the eyes of the spiral meet. So the real epiphany of this whole cosmic man woman is called the golden heart, the higher heart, where the two eyes become one. So this is not about twin flames, because when we talk about twin flames, I'm going to draw twin flames here. So we've got one golden spiral, but then if we draw the other golden spiral, which represents the other person, this represents two people in love. This is the symbol for love that we've used for thousands of years. But the epiphany is that these two eyes of the spiral represent two beings in love. But our spiritual journey is not about just loving another, it's about loving ourselves. So this is an image that Dan Winter did an animation on, which I'll show in my presentations. But I'm going to merge the two eyes of God into the one. And this is the mathematics of infinity. So I'm going to draw one spiral here. And it goes around forever, like that. And now the other spiral is, I'll do it in purple, to show that the two spirals now merge at a common point, which I believe is the true esoteric meaning of what the heart is all about. So that's really what this whole chart is about. So I've effectively put everything down visually because we learn through high visual content. So I decided to put other things in here to make the human body look like a tree. So this section here is all about our roots. If we hug a tree, what are you doing when you hug a tree? You're actually putting your heart against the tree. You become one with the tree of life. But you can therefore choose to go down into the roots where you see your past life, your connection to the ancestors, to all your memories of your birth, everything. But the other thing too is that we hug a tree, our heart connects to the cells of the tree, but we can go up the tree into the branches to see our future, to see our guides, to access the Akashic records, to go to the halls of healing. So I like to talk about the tree of life because this is our roots. This is where the energy comes in through the left foot and the energy comes out through the right foot. So therefore that means the energy comes in through our left hand and it comes out of the right hand. Energy comes in through the torus. That's what the torus does. It sucks energy in, and we also breathe in through our feet. And the melting pot or the meeting place of these counter-rotating fields is the heart. And what's interesting here is that the center of this whole chart, if you drew a diagonal there and a diagonal there, you can see these two lines. They meet right here at the center. So this is the point of our navel. This is symbolic of our embryonic connection to the galactic knowledge. So every part of this drawing has a symbolic meaning. So, and the reason why that's important is that this is the point of birth. That's why I've got this little embryo, this cute little embryo is emerging out of the center of this cosmic man. The reason why that's interesting is because we're talking about the golden heart. The first organ to form in the embryo is not the brain. Most people think the brain was the first thing to form. It's actually the human heart. So we have to learn how to come back to our center, back to our heart, how to love, how to forgive, heal all these emotions, because it's not about attaining more knowledge. That's, in one sense, I've put all this information and data to represent cosmic knowledge, but we're not after knowledge. We're learning how to let go, how to reconnect with our higher self. So I've put some other components in here. So when we look at the torus here, I have one over here. There's this drawing here shows that the sphere implodes. It's a dimple, like an apple is a torus, and there's a south pole and north pole, but there's energy within the implosion of the sphere. So that's called sacred geometry at its best. Sacred geometry is really about remembering who we are, where we came from. So we need to study the mathematics of nature. So when we study a pine cone over here, you can see that there's two spirals going on. So we've got a symbolic drawing of the 813, because if you stare at this cone, there's 8 spirals going clockwise. But if you squint your eyes and look again, you're going to see that there's 13 spirals going the other way. So this is that duality of left and right, energy coming in and out. And that's why that's kind of like a vortex. So this is the vortex of energy sucking in, because when you were at 512 cells, the geometry of mitosis became a torus. We were a torus, and the first organ to form was the human heart. So you've got the explosion and implosion. This became your mouth, sucking in, and then this became your anus, the explosion, letting go. So the fundamental shape of the universe is a torus. So that was the original inspiration for this cosmic man, woman, golden heart. There's 20, and the mathematics of the Fibonacci sequence, when we subtract number 9 from all the Fibonacci numbers, like 3, 5, 8, 13 becomes 4, 21 becomes 3, we end up with a Sri 108 code. And then we learn how to square our circle, how to make heaven and earth equal. And this reveals all the galactic code numbers of 24 and 27, 108. So this is a journey of looking to understand where we came from and who we are. So there's a lot in this. One of the most important things we can do is start looking at multi-dimensional geometry. So we might have a tetrahedron here, which has 4 triangle faces. But when Magic Spider goes into the tetrahedron and joins the 4 face centers internally, we get a small tetrahedron inside the mother tetrahedron. And the volume of this tetra fits 27 times into the mother. So this ratio of 24 to 27 or 8 is to 9 is a harmonic code. So there'll be certain sequences like 27, which is Rubik's Cube, double at 54, 108, 216, 432 hertz. And all these cosmic numbers relate to the diameter of the sun. So we contain all this knowledge within us. That's the point. It's not about knowledge. It's the epiphany of loving who we are and where we're going. So I just wanted to give you a little download on the Golden Heart Sacred Geometry. And if you want to know more, you can go to the link in the bio. And I hope you enjoyed this small presentation. Thank you.
And just say, if you enjoyed this presentation, please register for my webinar. Okay. Just try that again.
And if you want to know more about sacred geometry and you enjoyed this, you want to know more, you can register for my webinar through the link in the bio.
Yep, just try it. No, that's right. And just try it one more time. Just say, so if you enjoyed...
this presentation.
Yeah, no, if you enjoyed this video, I have a full presentation on it, on this very topic.
Oh, yes.
So you can register for the webinar on the higher heart in the link.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed this presentation, I have a longer discourse, full presentation on this golden heart, higher heart.
That's right, yeah, keep going on it.
So I'm saying that in the presentation...
So, because what's happened is you've just given us a 10-minute video.
I want them to watch the webinar.
But tell them to watch a webinar. If you enjoyed this, go watch my webinar on the same topic.
Go see the link in the bio. So webinar, that's the word I use. Okay. So if you enjoyed this presentation, I've got a whole half an hour discourse on this in an upcoming webinar. So to view it, just go to the link in the bio and you can access more of the sacred geometry. Thanks for your time.